In this episode, I'm joined by my mother, ladies and gentlemen, the amazing Nikki Vee. Welcome back to the Empire Builders podcast.
I know.
It's not many people that get invited back to do a second episode.
Well, I was kind of quietly flattered.
I'm probably, I don't know, I'm glutton for punishment maybe for bringing you back. But actually, the theme of this episode is less about, the previous episode, by the way, was all about disc profiling and becoming a world-class coach, which, you know, you can, if you're watching on YouTube, listening on the podcast, you can catch that previous episode. It's way back near the start, I think, of the podcast, Jav. Maybe in the show notes, you can put what episode that was. So I talk a lot about attending Tony Robbins seminars at 12 years of age, and people go, wow, like, how did that happen? And I tell my version of the story. Yeah. Today is your chance to tell your version of the story. We'll see if the two actually align and match.
Unlikely, because according to you, I don't have that great a memory.
Well, you know, I don't like to say, but we actually had a bit of a debate, didn't we, the other day about was I 12 or was I 13 at the first Tony Robbins seminar? You think 13, I think 12. It doesn't really matter. It was around that time. Exactly. So how did you discover personal development and Tony Robbins in the first place?
Whoa. So, of course, I'll give you full permission, as I already have for the last 39 years, to interrupt me.
Don't worry, I will. And I'm sure you'll do the same. How did you get into Tony Robbins' personal development? So,
it is a long story, and it's about DISC as well, about personality styling, because as you know, my background was corporate. So, long story short, I'll go back as far as me and your dad.
Oh, that is a long way back.
Right. When you were a very tiny little one. I was telling your son the other day about when you were 2 years old and we owned a snooker club in the middle of Birmingham, me and your dad. And as you know, you and your dad, there's an interesting moment when I can't get those words out, which is interesting, isn't it? Me and your dad broke up when you were, I can never remember that either, about 3.5, 4. And we'd always had a few challenges and had different needs in life. And so we split up. And you may not know this, is that because, again, when I'd had you as a baby, I had 6 weeks off to have a baby and went straight back to work. And I was selling advertising, like shop to shop. And Bob and I, your dad, we used to sell advertising. And so we break up. I'm like, I've put a 3.5-year-old in a suitcase and on our way, as it were. And I didn't know what to do. So I actually went to the Birmingham Post and Evening Mail for an advertising job. But of course, that was going to be a normal job, and I was not used to that. I'd never really had much of a normal job.
But by the way, something that most listeners can probably, or viewers can probably relate to, like you'd had a business with my dad running a snooker club. It's like, so then to go this way
24/7, 365 days a year.
Yeah, it was open all the time. And now all of a sudden you go into like a normal job. It's going to feel weird, right?
And apart from some part-time jobs I'd had when I was at college and stuff like that, in hairdressing salons, Swan National Car. Anyway, you can imagine. I go to get a normal job, and I went for an interview, and they quite liked me and everything. And then I saw my friend, and she said, "I saw an advert in the Birmingham Evening Mail last night for an area manager for snooker clubs." And I went for the interview, and 65 men, all from like brewery backgrounds, you can imagine pub backgrounds and everything, went for the interview, and I got it. And actually a funny little story, which is probably going to answer some of your other questions as well, is one of the reasons why I believe that I was very successful in the corporate world, even though my dad had never worked for a company, as you know, your grandfather, Popper, was,
and again, very entrepreneurial.
Very entrepreneurial.
Yeah, not would not have survived a day in a normal job.
God, no, he was like a nightmare. But anyway, he taught me a lot, and I'll never forget the thing that he taught me is I'm going for the second interview. We're going to Padiham in Burnley, where Riley's snooker head office was. And for some reason, I think your dad had got the car or something, or I can't remember now. But anyway, Daddy, your granddad took me. And we were driving at the motorway, and he just asked me one great question. He said, are you worried about anything? And I said, actually, truthfully, I'm just a bit worried that they're going to say to me, you're a single mom of a 4-year-old, 3.5-year-old boy. How are you going to handle that with like a full-time job, travelling all over the region as it was at that time? I said, I don't know what I'm going to say. He said, right, I'll tell you exactly what to say. As you know, he would have done. He said, they ask you whatever question you say, you look them straight in the eye and you say, fortunately, that's no problem. And then just, as we would say, STFU, shut the fuck up. And I did it. They asked me that question and I did it and got the job. And so you see.
And by the way, that sums up Pop, my granddad, like to a T.
Yeah.
Just, he would pretend that nothing was a problem. There was some
nothing was a problem in his mind.
But in reality, to most people, like some of the problems he had in business, financially, all of those things, he's like, it's not a problem.
Yeah.
And so he created that reality for himself, which I think is amazing talent.
And of course, as you always say, while we're on the subject, his beliefs about money have created my life.
So how did you go from getting a job with Riley Snooker to getting into Tony Robbins?
And I got a lot of luck. I was with this old-fashioned company, and then like all of a sudden they get taken over. They throw out all the old people, and they say to me, "What would you do with these 10 snooker clubs you've got in the Midlands?" Well, it's difficult to ask somebody like me or you or my dad an opinion on something and not expect, because as you know, so I gave it in full barrels, right? And so they said, well, there's £1 million, do it. So I had a great time.
And this is in the 80s?
1987, yeah. Right. So I did it. And then we got taken over, very long story short. And then I find myself doing something because we had to. This is in the 80s. They brought in a rule that said that all companies had to invest in their people. This is way before investors in people. This is the Wages Act, which brought in the minimum wage, and then you'd got to look after your people. So I'm sitting around the boardroom table with a load of guys, obviously I'm the only girl, and they go, "You're a woman, do training." Right? So I was not offended by that. So I go, yes, because I'm a woman, I'm somehow have got multitasking over you guys. I was a bit like that then. I'm definitely retired from all that now. But I was quite militant. So I did training, right? And eventually, one of the first people that ever walked into my room, which we called sales development training, then it became HR, human resources. One of the first people that walked in was a lady called Anne Benford from Thomas International, from the Disc people. And so she taught me the philosophy of understanding human psychology. And I think that's my absolute answer to how did I get into personal development, that Thomas, Ray Reid, who was the owner of Thomas, who must be in his 90s now if he's still on the planet, incredible man, he founded, Disc in this country kind of thing, and taught me so much about human psychology. So then I'm training a 2-day course on Disc in our company for all new managers, and we had about 160 managers, so we're always getting to lots of turnover because we're nightclubs and bars and snooker clubs. And a guy came to the front of the room at the end of the 2 days, and he said, "I think you're going to like this," and gave me some tapes, audio tapes of Tony Robbins, a guy called Steve Clark. And I went, "Thank you very much," put them in the cupboard, never thought any more about it. So then a few years later, I have an operation, and they said, "You need 3 months off work," so I took 10 days. And in that 10 days, I listened to the audio.
What was it you think made you decide to do that in those 10 days? Because you could have just read a book, you could have just watched TV, you could have done nothing, you could have been on the phone doing work. No. Why did you decide? What was the tipping point?
That is a great question. I think what the the different personality styles, the human psychology of that. Because don't forget, that's about fears, it's about different ways of doing things, different ways of thinking. I think that got me more interested in why do people do what they do, which is, and of course, I must have read something on the back of the leaflet that said, he's success formulas and all that sort of thing. And so I listened to it, and then I saw him again, and I said, fantastic, the guy talks like 100 miles an hour, which is great, because I do too. And he went, he's coming to Birmingham. So this is now 1995, and he came and did a Unleash Power Within at Birmingham. And I took Steve Clark, the guy that taught me the thing, Auntie Ali, who lives in Australia, and Conrad, who was the bonkers manager of the London nightclubs, who, let's just say, he indulged in everything you can imagine to indulge in. Took him with me. Don't know how I ever managed to get him. And he came out vegan, no alcohol, no drugs, engaged to his girlfriend. And he's never really looked back, to be honest. So we, all four of us, but I was the first person at the back of the room with my card booking to go to America to learn more. Because people ask me, well, what did you get from that first? The most amazing thing that happened to me, which is why, fast forward a bit, when I went to the first event with Robbins, and I'm at the back of the room buying what was then Mastery University, which is 3 events, because I'm the kind of person I am, but I suppose because of Daddy's influence, and because I was doing well in my job, and it was one of the things that I always I was never frightened of losing my job, ever. I always knew that I could always get a job somewhere. I always knew that I would have the confidence to do that. And therefore, I went to my boss at the time and just went, right, I'm doing this thing. That means I'm going to have 6 weeks off next year. I've probably got 4 weeks holiday or 5 weeks holiday, and I'll take the other 2, And he basically said to me, look, your 99% is your 99% work ethic is 150% of anybody else's. And he said, look, you have as much time as you like, because every time you come back, you teach other people stuff. Because I was still already doing training and what we would now call coaching. I didn't even call coaching then. And so at the first event, I had a massive breakthrough, because I am not going to tell you this story because it is too long, but my second husband.
By the way, we're on 3 and counting.
No, don't you dare. I am 3 and I'm done. We had an interesting, I take full responsibility 100% for the fact that I was not as very good at being a wife at the time, and because I was too busy, in corporate world and all that. And when we split up, he actually went to the Church of Scientology. Now, I don't know how much people know about the Church of Scientology, but anyway, it's got some bad press, but it's also got some personal development in it. Yeah. Like Robin Hubbard, who wrote a lot of the books, his intention was just to have people experiencing. He, quote unquote, wasn't trying to make it into any sort of sect or anything like that. But anyway, blah, blah. So I went with him to that. He persuaded me to go with him. He went back twice and then disappeared, and I kept going, right? And I quite liked it, because it was all human psychology stuff, and we're doing all this thing where you hold the thing and you have to tell the truth and everything. I'm fully made up. I love it, right? And I did my first there I am, by this time, running the nightclubs train. So let's say participating in, alcohol and fine dining at quite a high rate, as you will probably remember. And I then go for a purification thing at the Church of Scientology, which I actually loved, to go cold turkey like Tony and I do now in Thailand, where we don't eat anything for 15 days or something and just drink juice and stuff. Anyway, so I did it, and they liked me, and they said, you could do this, you could become a trainer. So I said, okay, well, great. Well, then the first thing you've got to do is we need you to go for 6 months to Los Angeles. I said, oh, no, I can't. I said, because my son is now, I'm losing count of where I am now, but like, so I said, I can't, anyway, this you'll find interesting. They got some special offers on. So they're definitely not stupid when it comes to sales.
Oh, no, that's right.
And they said, if you buy all these training courses, which you can go and do in America, I'm fully into that. I've already done loads with Robbins, And, how did I buy then? Oh, no, I can't remember my timing now.
I don't think you had.
No. Okay, so I was fully up to going to America. I've always wanted to go and live in America, never quite made it yet. Anyway, and so they said, if you buy all these training courses, we'll do you a massive discount. And I, to this day, swear that they said, and if you change your mind, you can just have your money back. So I then, because they've told me I really need to go for 6 months, and you're in the middle of, I think, GCSEs, or it could have been.
You're miles off.
Miles
this,
off.
by the way, this is where it gets really interesting.
No,
This was pre. Oh wait, I'm gonna.
Oh no, it's pre-Robbins.
So you stop talking for a second. I'm going to tell this story. Jav actually asked for some old photos of me. I don't even know what he's asking for, like why, but that's probably going to show. It's probably going to show up soon somewhere on social media. So he wanted some old photos. So Claire, my assistant, contacted my mum saying, "Send some photos. Give Nick some photos. Bring in. He'll pass them to Jav." So I did, and on the back of the photos, she's helpfully written some notes of like what year it was, how old I was. There's one photo, right, and it said. It said 2001 when I would have been like 19, and it said like 13 years of age. And then
you were small.
I look at it, and it's neither 2001 nor am I 13 on this photo. It is so inaccurate. So look, the timelines on this episode are going to be fluid at best. But like, let's just stick with it.
I think you're about 11.
I'm going to just agree for the purpose of...
So I said, no, I'm not going. So I said, actually, no. If you're saying I really need to do them all, and somehow something was feeling not right. So I said, right, I'll have my money back, you see. They said, well, you can't. You obviously need more therapy, Like, remember my old strapline?
I'm sure we already knew that.
And my old strapline was, don't with me because you'll lose, right? So I got very intense with them. Got nowhere whatsoever. I've literally, and we were talking about now, whatever year that is when you were about 11.
Yeah, call it early 90s. Just call early 90s to save debate.
Let's be fluid, yes, right. And literally, they got 15 grand of my money. I mean, it's not, it wasn't a small amount then.
Well, it's not a small amount now, but early 90s, 15 grand, that's a lot. That's like the equivalent of probably like 50, 60 grand.
And I'd obviously got it, but then I'd got no money. And I'm going, this doesn't feel right. So I go to UPW. So we now know the year, so it's 1995. So, and this is way after I was with Simon, right? So, so I go, and he stands on the stage and he goes, we're going to do the success formula. And he says, everybody in the audience, you have to decide, what do I want? Give me something that you want. And I just wrote on my piece of paper, I want my money back.
I want 15 grand, dude.
I want my 15 grand back. I thought, I'll be, Then he goes, take massive action. I felt like putting my hand up and going, I have took so much fucking massive action. You would not believe. I was writing, I was ringing, I was going in, I was being a pain in the arse, right? And nothing's working. So then he changed my life. Because the third part of the successful, of course, is if it's not working, change your approach. Well, first of all, notice what's working. If it's working, keep doing it.
Yeah.
If it's not working, change your approach. And then he said, of course, he always knows what you're thinking. He goes, and if you don't know what to do the opposite. I thought, great, that's it. Did the rest of the weekend, had a lovely weekend. Turn up at the Church of Scientology, and I'm thinking, well, how do I do the opposite?
Give them more money?
Well, yeah. I thought, I have been intense, sworn at them, shouted at them, being very like, you can't do this to me. So I thought, what could I do? So I did the only thing available to me. I cried like a baby. I behaved like, shall I say, a very emotional, crying kind of person. I'd had good practice because I had been married to somebody who did a lot of that. And within half an hour, I had a check for 15,000. So in the proverbial Tony Robbins words, this shit works, I thought. So I have already signed up at the back of the room and to go to do mastery. And I go.
Which, funny enough, probably about similar investment. So it's interesting how it works.
Yeah.
So well, you've kind of, Tony's taught you how do you get 15 grand back. You've gone and got your 15 grand back. You invested with Tony.
Well, it was $9,995. I mean, I've been on the table.
Plus travel expenses.
Oh, yes, of course, 15 grand. Exactly. See, I didn't think about the travel expenses. So, yeah. Anyway, so I go to Aspen, Colorado to do the first event, and I realised they've got a kids program. And I sat there and I made two decisions then. Now, it's interesting that you're sitting here now with the kind of success you've experienced in all areas of your life. So the first decision was, I'm bringing Nick here. He's going to be on the program, and I'm bringing him back twice this year. That's why I know, because we went back for Wealth Mastery, which was a 6-day program, and then Life Mastery, which was a 9-day program, and you did the 2 there. And the other decision I made, because at that point, Mom and Dad were living not in a nice place. They were living in a little flat, which you might remember.
Yeah.
And we
lived in it regularly in between marriages. Let's just leave that bit there.
I don't think that was necessary for you to bring that up, to be honest. But anyway, and I sat there and thought, I'm doing really well. I've also got another 15 grand that I didn't think I'd get back. But anyway, I was doing really well. And one of my mentors said to me, just invest, just invest. Get a bigger house, invest in stuff, property. And at the time, that was the thing to do. So instead of getting a nice place for you and me, I got a nice place and I had Mum and Dad move in with us. And that was a big decision, because that's now, let's not go there with how many years ago it is, but it's a long time ago. And obviously Mom's still with us. And
she's 95.
96 at Christmas. And so I made those two decisions, which were life-changing.
Yeah.
And so the thing that I remember the most, but I'd be interested to ask you, what do you remember the most? The thing I remember the most was that took you on the kids program to start with, and that was like nothing else that I'd ever seen as to how they trained, coached, were with kids. Everything from, it was all vegan, carob, chocolate, cookies, or whatever they were. Vegan cooks from Maui, do you remember the 4 vegan cooks? And then, people that were training you, coaching you, mentoring you, teaching you, to the point that, I remember dropping you off at 7 o'clock in the morning and going back at 3 o'clock the next morning when Roberts had finished. And we will be walking back to the hotel room and you telling me, all about it. And of course, we met Matthew there, who was one of the trainers who just adored you and just taught you about art and about music and just more stuff than you would have got at school,
100%. But
also lots of learnings that were Robbins learnings, but delivered in a way that was valuable to you. And of course, one of the things which makes my heart sing when I think about it was when Tony and I, fast forward a long time, had our retreat in Austria. Where
the confusion could be, this is not Tony Robbins we're referencing now. My mum's husband, he's called Tony Vee. Yeah. So you got 2 Tonys.
I've never been married to Tony Robbins.
Here. Not yet, who knows? Could be number 4.
Yeah, so no. So really, what I remember was that you learning stuff, but there was something that happened at the airport, because I was thinking about it driving along, because Claire had given me a bit of an idea of what we were doing today. Bit of an idea, knew nothing else. Is I remember being at the airport going home from Hawaii and realising maybe what I was taught with Robbins, but maybe just realising by spending time with you, and you're 12, 13, of course we're guessing.
Well, I'm pretty sure I was 12 now, because 95, I would have turned 13 at the end of 95.
Oh, right. That was 96. Anyway, let's not go there. And I remember realising I was a mom, which I know, people are going to relate to. I was a mom that didn't want you to have any pain in your life. So I didn't exactly wrap you in cotton wool, but I'd have liked to have done. But I wanted you to have the very best experience all the time, not because I'd had a bad time, but actually because I'd had a great upbringing. And I wanted you to have that. And I wanted to make up for the fact that you didn't have your dad around and all that sort of thing. But I realised that one of my biggest faults was trying to help you make decisions. And I could even remember the moment we're waiting for a plane in LA on the way back from Hawaii or something like that. And you have decided that you're going to start your own business with Michael.
So I'm 13 years of age. This is my first business venture.
Was it dog walking?
It was dog walking.
And I'm on the tip of my tongue going, right, so what we'll do is we'll get this done, we'll get a leaflet, we'll go this, we'll put something a bit there. And I thought, no, I realised right then that I had not just a highly intelligent, incredible young man as my son, but someone who was wise way beyond their years. You always were. But someone who had got a lot of wisdom and a lot of you were smart. And so I changed from being the mom that went, right, so here's the thing I will do, Nick, like when you had a paper round and I used to take you because I didn't want you going on your bike when it was dark, right? I actually said, what do you think you need to do? I can remember it as if it's yesterday, honestly. And you came out with this plan. That's where you got strategic planning from, clearly. You had it in your bones. Anyway, so I'm biased, clearly. And you came out with this plan and you and Michael then went and did that first business. And so whatever they taught you about art, about music, about business, about people was, for me, vital. So the next thing that happened was obviously I then did a lot more Robins myself, but I always went back as crew. I always went back. And therefore, then when you got to, do you want me to go to this bit now?
You go in there, so just crack on. What I will say, because I don't think we should skim over it, the first business, we walked 0 dogs. We actually walked 0 dogs.
It worked. I just said you were good at planning.
No, but the point is, you can have a plan, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee success. We walked 0 dogs. We put leaflets out and put signs up all around the local neighbourhood. Nobody phoned. We didn't follow up because I didn't know anything about sales, and we walked 0 dogs. But that's not the point. The point is, at the time, what it did, being in that environment, it gave me the inspiration that actually things like that were possible. Because there aren't many 12, 13, however old I was, kids who decided to start businesses. Yeah. And so I think what it did was it gave me that different way of thinking. It opened my mind up to possibilities and opportunities that maybe a lot of people wouldn't consider at that age, which I think is the advantage of being in that environment. And
do you know something else that I remember from those times? And sometimes I think I've mentioned it to Nat at one point recently, where I said, do you know what? I remember, as I say, trying to, put him in cotton wool. But then you had this lovely friend that lived around the corner with a lovely family, weren't they? And I'd be off at work and you'd be around there or something. And I remember you coming home early one night, because you used to say, what time do I have to be back from being out with your mates? And I'd say, whatever time. And you'd go, can I go later? And I go, don't even go there, right? don't fuss with me. And I remember you coming home early and I'm going, well, what's the problem? He's going, they were just being stupid. And I don't want anything to do with that. They were throwing things at people's windows. And what I love is that we're sitting here all these years later of indefinable amounts. And you have on your wall at home the values that you are for you and Nat and the boys. And it says, we don't do drama.
Yeah.
And I believe that, especially as I obviously was an actress before I did everything else we've talked about, I can be quite dramatic.
No.
You don't do drama. And I think, I don't know, maybe that's your dad, maybe, I don't know, but you just never did drama. And I think that one of the things that I loved about you at that time was you had that, look, I'm sitting in your office now. It says we practice self-awareness and humility. And biased as this may sound, you had that from a very early age.
Yeah, and
you were humble.
Yeah, thank you. And I think all of that, part of the conversation here probably is going to be what shaped you, what shaped me, do you think? And I by no means think I'm perfect or I've got all the answers, but equally, I do believe that I had a massive advantage starting my first proper business in my kind of early 20s. Massive advantage was that I'd spent 10 years there or thereabouts in and around these amazing people in incredible environments, at Tony Robbins seminars in Hawaii, studying NLP, hypnosis, all of these things around incredible people. And I think, you are, generally speaking, you're the products of your environment, the people you surround yourself with, who you become. And that certainly was a big advantage for me.
Yeah, and it's interesting because obviously I started then also mixing with more people who did personal development. Yeah. Like we used to go to the Yes groups and, the Robbins groups and everything, and we got lots of friends. And something that people find really difficult about personal development is sometimes you have to kind of let go, or you don't have to do anything, but you sometimes find yourself feeling slightly out of kilter with some of your older friends. Yeah. Some of the old friends. So like some of my school friends, I kind of lost contact with because they were more traditional 35, 40-year-old women. And I was flying about, and going to America and walking on hot coals and jumping off poles. And so, which brings me to something else I must remember to say. And so I think that period was huge for you. My personal development journey then went on. And then, of course, we get to you being about 17, I think, when you said, I want to go to the adult version. Now, I know some kids used to go earlier to the Robbins full one, but you didn't. You went to the kids camp and then at 17 and went there. And even though I think we might have stayed in a house together or something, you were on your own, doing your own thing, meeting people. And of course, because you loved it, I was the first one at the back of the room signing you up for the full year or whatever. I don't think you ever did wealth, actually, but anyway, that's by the by. And because you loved it, and because I could see what it had done for me, and yes, I was successful before I did personal development, but I was successful because I knew how to manage people, make money, sell myself.
But how do you define success?
Well, exactly. And I think that...
Because look, I remember...
I was stressed to hell.
I remember. So, before I was 12 or 13 years of age and you got into attending Unleash the Power Within with Tony Robbins and all that, you were successful in your career, but I'm going to put it to you that didn't mean you were successful in all areas of life.
No, absolutely. Well, first of all, not in relationships, because I didn't give relationships any kind of importance, because I was thinking, well, the only important thing is to, get money and be safe and have what you want in life. But I think that the interesting thing is that level of stress, because you are too driven to get money rather than purposeful or values driven or whatever, which is obviously what you learn on personal development. I mean, the values exercise that I did and that you did, it designs your future. You're designing your future. And so I think that I realised that it wasn't for me. So what year were you 17 then? See, it shows how bad I am at maths, honestly. I never was good at maths.
Yeah, like 99.
Yes. So even though even though I'd learnt so much, I was still very kind of, I've got to like make a load of money. I've got to meet my budgets. I've got to meet my targets. And I was like very driven, and we were very hire and fire, and kind of like, so what happened for me, which was really quite fabulous, really, was that we got taken over. And I was very fortunate that we got taken over. I said to them, look, I can stay, but you don't really want me to stay and I don't want to stay. So they paid me a whole bunch of money to go, which was fab, and had the car for a year and all that kind of stuff, which gave me the freedom to go, well, now I just become a coach and work for myself. Now, without going into detail of how that happened, and then I did something else, and then I did something else, I think from a personal development point of view, at that point now, I have found the benefit of service to others, selfless service, and giving my time to be there to support other people on their journey from asleep in a trance thinking that all life is just about, school, job, marriage, house, retirement, die, to have them be, for some every reason, whether they're with Robbins or, anybody who does personal development, to help them to support them through those moments, because it's not the easiest thing to go through personal development. People think it's like training and it's all rah and motivational. It's not that, because it really is about understanding the deepest fears within you, right? It's about realizing what's been holding you back. It's about realizing what you're carrying from your childhood. It's about realizing what you're carrying from past significant emotional events. And once you get really clear about what is holding you back, what's causing you to be stressed, what's that, you start to go, well, okay, now I know all that. What do I do?
Yeah.
And that's where continuously developing, being on that journey, finding other people like I found Brandon, very different kind of personal development, more spiritual development, more esoteric, really opened me up to go, like, I have the ability or the power to impact my life in so many different ways than success. And so I was lucky, because then I was, kind of semi-made redundant. And so I came out of that business. And when I looked at it from the outside looking in, without sort of sounding too harsh, we're talking about, sex, drugs and rock and roll, and a lot of violence and a lot of not good energy. And to be honest with you, that's how we made our money. So I was pleased to leave, really, once I left. And I'd also got to a point where the money wasn't that important. And that was why, we had quite a big house, and I sold that and sort of bought a smaller one and kind of went, do you know what? I just want to do more traveling. I want to do more personal development. And now I'm going to do coaching, And I think that what I noticed with you was you did the same. So I remember the first one that we crewed together. We went and crewed, so I think it was Cardiff, if I remember rightly. So you did like your first.
Definitely London.
Okay, good. See, geography not that great either. But anyway.
Here's the funny thing.
You went to Cardiff with me though.
I didn't. It was the Wembley Conference Centre, which is next door to the Hilton at Wembley. You can see.
But that's where you
it's
did
next
your
door.
first.
That's where I did my first. That's where I attended my first Unleash the Power Within, and then the next year went back and crewed, volunteer crewed.
Yes.
And we now, I never even thought of this until we've had this conversation. We now run Expert Empires, and no word of a lie, it is next 50 yards. It is next door.
That's where you did your first event and your first crewing.
Yeah. That's crazy. Scary. Yeah. So there must be some reason for that, like some deep kind of deep-rooted or deep-seated unconscious reason why we've picked the Hilton at Wembley to be our home for Expert Empires.
That is unbelievable. Yeah. That is crazy. Unbelievable. And I've been there a few times because I was in nightclubs and because we sold so much alcohol. I was constantly going to Wembley to the football and staying at the Hilton and everything. Amazing. Anyway, so actually, let me ask you a question. How do you believe maybe not going as far back as the 12, 13 years age or the kids program, but how do you believe that it affected you going to your first event and then going back as crewing? Because those are two very different experiences.
Yeah, I think the first event that I attended, Unleash the Power Within with Tony Robbins in London. I was there as a 17-year-old, and whilst I think I was always quite intelligent and a fairly good judge of people and situations, was quite good at that, I wasn't that confident. Like, I wasn't that self-assured and confident. And so I think that was probably, as I went on my personal development journey, it was really the main area that I guess was required work for me, was belief in myself, loving myself, being confident in myself.
Yeah.
That was probably what I worked on. Then the difference, and you know, that was probably a year or two journey, 17, 18 years of age, and then started working for the Tony Robbins group as a volunteer at Unleash the Power Within, which I think there was two things. One, learned very, very foundational and important skills around coaching and communicating with people. They used to give amazing training around that.
Incredible.
And you were there, you know, you didn't pay for it. You were essentially volunteering your time in exchange for great training. That was really valuable. I think the second thing is, over the next few years, like, I learned what it took to run a world-class event and create a world-class experience. And I think even now, to this day, that there is no, I could try my best. I don't think I could teach anyone how to do it as well as I learned how to do it from being, I reckon we must have spent between the ages of me being 21 to maybe 17 to maybe 22, 5 years, I reckon we spent 100 days plus in Tony Robbins seminars, workshops, conferences, events, and working on them, around them as well. And I go, that level of experience you just can't get anywhere else. You can't put a price on it.
And actually, you're right. I've never even looked at it that way. Is that not only you, I always say, when I used to, you know, with Master Coach and stuff, trainings, I used to say, look, there is nothing more valuable than having people in front of you going through stuff. And like, you're there for a week with 2,000 people. Basically, you've got more experience in that week than most coaches get in a lifetime for handling people who are in a difficult state, and you've got to, you know, help them.
Well, best example, I think you're probably going to share this at some point, 9/11.
Oh, like
September 11th, 2001.
Yeah.
We are in Hawaii at Tony Robbins Life Mastery. You're one of the coaches.
Yeah.
You're the coach for the New York team.
Manhattan.
Half of the New York team have got businesses, family, etc. in New York. Some of them have lost businesses, lost family members, and you're coaching these people. I was there, I think I was there as a volunteer crew member.
Yes.
So here's what's interesting now. And the team say this to me all the time. They go like, we're at an event and something happens and you're so calm and you seem to know what to do. I'm like, we had people in our care, and bear in mind, I was only like 18 years of age, and we've got people in our care. You're coaching the New York team. I'm there with a couple of thousand people, and like, we're trying to manage this. And I go, when you've experienced that at 18 years of age, 20 years later now, when like it happened at one of our events a few years ago now, somebody's having like a seizure or a fit in the audience.
Yeah, and it's you and
I'm calm, I'm cool and calm, because I'm going like, this is nowhere near as extreme as what I've had to deal with in the past. So I've got references of how to operate and how to manage my state and how to communicate.
When that happened, you said to me, Mom, and I just went, okay, you deal with the hotel or deal with and I said, I'll deal with the people who are trying to help who don't know what they're doing. Yeah. Right. And obviously I can be fairly intense with people at times. But
the point is, when you've been in that environment and you've been through and you've experienced everything there is to experience. And by the way, somebody having a seizure in the event, I've seen it 20 times before and been at close quarters and had to deal with it. So when it happens and the team who haven't seen it before are freaking out, I'm not freaking out.
Yeah.
It's the experience.
And do you know what? Something, it just might remind me, because we had somebody have a seizure at one of our events, one of Tony and my events. And was something that I did without thinking about it was to go and lie on the floor with this person and hold them.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of the training that we had to help people walk on fire. Because so I always used to say to people, if you can help somebody do something when they are terrified, that level of certainty that you have to have, but that certainty with a whole load of love and understanding, if you can do that, you can basically handle anything.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, some of the training that we had is absolutely irreplaceable. You're talking about 9/11 as well. I remember, because you remember, like, talk about 2,000 people freaking out, 2,400 people freaking out, because you've got all the crew and all the trainers and everybody's freaking, right? And I remember what they did, which is genius. They took all the leadership, all the coaches and all the crew into a room. And they said, you are not leaving this room until you can prove to one of the trainers that you're in a good enough state. Yeah. And they kept us in that room. And I remember seeing people who were like very experienced people just absolutely going to pieces. And like, you know, I've had an experience with one of the people that's on his video where her boyfriend was in the 109th floor. I don't know whether you know that story. Yeah. And funny enough, the funny thing about that, and I do teach people what I did to help her deal with the trauma, if you like, of having him leave a message to say, I'm going to jump, you know. But the thing that was actually another thing was learning is when I saw her freaking out, I am stood there as, you know, not exactly a newbie, but I'm not that experienced. And a woman came up behind me called Karen O'Donnell, who's a dentist who has been around Tony Robbins. And she's there. She didn't come and look at me. She just went, and we watched this woman freaking out with all the team around her and everything. And she just quietly said in my ear, so what are you going to do? And that was one of the things about Robbins, is they would never go and deal with it for you. They train you how to go and deal with it. It was awesome. And she said, what are you going to do? And I went, I don't know. And she went, well, go and do that then. And just gently pushed me. And I mean, like, you cannot buy that kind of experience. You cannot buy that kind of, you were like in it. And I also remember, just going back to why I would recommend to people that they keep on that journey of personal development.
It's not a one and done. That's the mistake people make.
Absolutely not.
I was on Rob Moore's podcast the other week and we talked about this. I was like, the biggest mistake people make is that, I think the thing that causes people to not get the results and the experience they want from their personal development journey is they believe wrongly that it's a one and done. They believe that they go to one seminar or read one book or take one course and that's it. And that's not it. That's just the start. And if you want to continually improve and develop as a person, you've got to continually invest the time and the money in doing so.
And they sometimes think they're being sold to, and so they don't buy it and all that sort of thing. And it's a shame, because if people aren't very good at explaining why they think that because like it's all about momentum, it's all about repetition and all those sorts of things. But just all those experiences, all that learning how to handle people in the most difficult situations. But it reminds me about going back to when you were there as a youngster, as a 12, 13-year-old, is I remember we did of course we did firewalks, but I'm not sure whether you did firewalks at a very early age. I'm not sure they did. But we did this thing called jumping off a telegraph pole, you know, and we're both there. I'm 40, right? You're however old you are at the time, 12, 13. And I have decided, because I've done it twice, but I've done it the first time. So the first time I do my old pattern, because I'm a bit scared. Even though you've got little hearts in it, I think it's a bloody long way up and the wind's going and all that. So I've done my old pattern, which is to watch everybody else go and then go and do it. And did it, okay. So the second time, I've decided I'm going first. And I have, gone up and gone, I'll go first. Because the first time I'm asking the guy, tell me exactly what you do when you do that. And the guy said, everybody asks that. But the reason for telling that story is that then you are 12 or 13 or whatever. And you must have done it twice, because the first time I went to watch you, because they came and got the parents and said, your child's going to do it now. And you went near the end and you were like shaking like this, like really shaking and really like scared, because it's a very, tall thing. Yeah. 50. And then the second time we went, I must have just told you, I decided to go first. So then they come into the room and they say, the Nick's team's doing that, so come over. So I've run all the way, because it was miles, remember, to the thing. And there's this crowd of kids, and some of them were like 16, weren't they? Like, there was...
even the 13-year-olds were huge compared to...
They were huge.
Have you been to America? Like, I don't know what they feed them over there. They're all just huge. Yeah. I feel like a midget when I go to America. And so
I have got there. I'm absolutely, looking for you. I can't find you anywhere. I'm running about, I'm nearly crying. And then I'm like going through the crowd going, where is he? Because I'm thinking he'd be frightened. And there in the middle of this crowd of 50 kids, huge ones, is you with your little harness on. I could just cry thinking about it. And I've gone, Nick, honey. And you looked up to me and I went, you're going first. Well done. Thinking, and he went, well, you did, Mum.
Yeah.
He went. I'm talking as if you're not here. Because I can see him, your face now, and you went, you did. And I think that I kind of sort of take that. I think that there was a lot of things that I did which scared me, where you then went and followed that, which was great. But the best experience of that was when you were 19, and I also came and watched you. And you were still scared. We were all scared, right? Because it's scary. Because now he's 19, he's got competitiveness with all the other crew members, some of which were a lot older than you, some of the other mic runners, weren't they? And it's all, like...
It's quite laddie in that.
Quite laddie, right? And you've gone to do the pole, and you've gone up, because you've always been very light, you've gone up the pole, and now you've got to go to the trapeze, because now when you're little you just jump off, or when you're a girl you just jump off and you come down, and you've got to get to that trapeze. And the thing that you do as a trainer is you look up at somebody and you watch for them going from to, okay, I'm making the decision. You can see it in their eyes. And the first question that we asked as trainers when they came down is, what made you make the decision to go? And so I'm watching you, clearly I'm watching you because you're you. And you went from like standing there, and then you put your arms out like this. Somewhere I've got a photograph, I'll try and find it. You put your arms out and you let out this roar, and then leapt and got the trapeze and came out. And I'm like in floods, because I feel like then I saw the man I see today. Because and if I did ask you, I can't remember what you said, but if I did ask you, you might have said something like, I'm not just going to do it, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it well. Because isn't one of your sayings something like, you can't do everything.
You can do anything, but you can't do
everything. And the other thing you say, I often hear you say, is do what you do well. Like you talk about social media, don't you? And you go, don't be on everything. Do what you do and do it well. And so I think that personal development, like you said, you were saying about needing to get that confidence. I remember like when you got to crew at 9/11, at 2001 Life Mastery, you go and there was 80 crew, and Lauren Slocum has gone, you're first. Introduce yourself to all and these are people of my age, like some of the crew would be like businessmen, in their 50s and all that. And you had to stand on a small stage. And that's bringing me now to Discovery Camp.
Well, but look, I mean, I think, by the way, we've got like...
some photographs of Discovery.
We've got 10 minutes, by the way.
Great.
We've covered one question. We'll probably have a series.
Yeah.
Well, we'll find a name for the series. I think actually, in amongst all of that, you just gave the best piece of parenting advice that you could ever give. So parents listening, parents watching, listen to what was just said. And it was the piece about, I went first because you did. And if you think that was just about a story about a kid climbing up a telegraph pole and jumping off, you've missed the point. Because the number one thing you can do as a parent, and when I say parent, of course, you might not have kids. The number one thing you can do to lead other people is to go first, is to lead by example, to demonstrate, telling people what they should do. And I'm saying this and I'm listening to it myself. Telling my kids what they should do is different to showing them and going there first. And I think that's the biggest lesson, whether you're a parent, whether you're leading people in your career, in your business. That is it. If you go there first, people will follow your lead. And I don't think you can take people or force people to go somewhere that you haven't been yourself, or you're not willing to go there yourself. So I wanted to underline that. There was like loads of questions I wanted to ask in the 8 minutes we've got left.
Yeah. I'll give you one word answers. You know, he doesn't.
You're such a liar. You won't give me one word answers. We'll definitely do volume 2 of this interview at some point. What's the one thing you think I need to improve at?
You know the answer. You already know the answer. Patience.
Yeah.
Because it's my greatest lesson as well. Of course, we're very, very alike.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we're like two peas in a pod. We know that. Often we're together, you know, with the family or with people, and I know exactly what you're going to say before you've said it, and you probably feel the same with me. You're impatient. Oh, I mean, I've just read a book. I've cried at the end on the plane coming back. Have you ever read The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari?
No.
I bought it you as well.
You bought me a lot of books.
Yeah.
I didn't read most of them.
Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. Fantastic. And I think the reason why I loved it, and I didn't read it until a couple of years ago. And the sequel is what I've read on holiday with Nat last week, is that it reminds me of what my life was like when I was in corporate, all about success, all about money, allowing my time to be, I think of the times, actually, just going back to the parenting thing, when I think back, you were incredible. And I'm not saying, look, I'm not going to knock myself. I'm not saying you didn't learn from sitting in a car on a motorway, listening to me on the phone for like an hour, talking to somebody about business, right? I'm not saying that wasn't helpful, but I didn't give you the time and attention that I would suggest to people that they give to their children, right? And The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari is really about a guy who's got all the success and all the things, but like he's not doing well health-wise. And I think that you are such a great example of putting yourself first in terms of knowing that if you concentrate on your health and energy and fitness and state, that everything will work better. So like you've learned that yourself. This book is basically saying like, no wonder his life was in a bad state. And as the title says, he decides to become a monk. Now, obviously, Tony Vee and I have done many, many esoteric, bonkers things all over the world since personal development. But it really resounded with me to remind me that how if you put money first and not purpose, values, people, all those things, which you are such a great example of. And I mean, I don't know how much people know about how few businesses there are, and I've been in big businesses, who have got purpose, they've got missions, they've got values, and they are just on a piece of paper. They are not utilised, they're not talked about, they're not invested in the way that you do. You're so rare for this size of business to be even doing it, let alone doing it well. And I know you know that. And so then this sequel book that I read is about the same thing, but it's the next level. And it really helped me realise where my next level is, And it is this openness to allowing the path to unfold whilst planning. What's the expression? It's not the planning that's important, it's the planning process. So yeah. So not saying you don't have
plans are useless.
Yeah, exactly.
But the planning process is invaluable.
So not to say you don't have a planning process, not to say that you don't have dreams and goals, but to allow yourself to experience it by not always having it all set out in front of you. So sort of long way of saying patience. And the other thing I would say is being open to what you don't know about yet. Like being open to what presents itself, because my experience is that if you, not that you're doing this, but so many people do, they live their life like this, and this is a safety thing. And even if they open it a bit, they go, oh, I've got it now, a bit like the personal development. I'll just get the personal development and then I'm done. And I'll tell everybody else they need to go, but I won't develop myself anymore. When we've got our eyes wide open, there is so much more that can be experienced. And that's where Tony Vee is my greatest teacher, because he's not got his eyes wide open. He's like, he never goes to sleep kind of thing. You know what I mean? He is so wants new and incredible experiences of life, and he waits for them to present themselves as opposed to plans rather, you know. So for example, we were supposed to be moving to Madeira in September the 1st. We're not going. We're going to do more road trips because he just wants to explore the world. Yeah. And I'm going, you see, even though I'm like him in so many ways, still part of me has got my upbringing, which is, you know, you get a nice house and a nice car, and you know, you have your kids and you have nice holidays and everything. There's a part of me that goes, oh, we could have just sat and had swimming in the swimming pool and had a nice glass of wine and everything. No. And that's why
he's your greatest teacher.
Yeah. So patience, but also being open to what you don't know yet.
Nice. Right. That's going to have to conclude episode 1 of this series. And we're going to come up with a good name for this series. Because all we've really covered is the personal development journey, which was my first question. But there are many more that we want to dive into. So thank you. Thanks for coming in and sharing.
I've loved it. I think it should be, I think we should have a serious name, and then we should have dates and times are fluid.
Yeah, that would be the strap line. No, so thanks. And actually, because it's relevant to what we've spoken about, I think I'm very grateful. I say it a lot to the mastermind members, and I say it a lot on stage at events, but I don't actually say it to you. And I'm very grateful that you're my mum, and thank you for encouraging me and going first in going into personal development, and going first on the pole, and going first in all these different areas, and taking risks and investing crazy amounts of money in me and my development. And I'm very, very lucky. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for being a great example, because you taught me a lot too.
That concludes episode 1 of this series.
It's like the EastEnders.
And we'll be back with more, I'm sure. Thanks.